fits great. So you're trying to find some headers that'll fit your Chevy Nova. Well, I see tons of questions on Facebook and I get questions all the time. Hey, which headers will fit without any trouble? And the truth is, headers is like a Latin word for trouble. None of them fit without trouble. They're all going to be trouble to some extent. But I'm going to give you a couple of combinations and explain why header fitment is such a problem on these cars. So usually the passenger side is not a problem. The only problem you have on the passenger side, sometimes you might have to take the header bolts loose and kick the exhaust out a little bit to get the starter out if you have to change that. But usually that's only necessary if you have an oil pan with the kickouts like I have on this car. So it's pretty aggravating to get the starter in and out without taking, at least loosening the header bolts so the header will swing out a little bit from the block. And if you have an AC car, a lot of times your passenger header will hit the box right here. You have to dent the box. Some people knock a hole in the box and put a little patch over it with fiberglass or something like that. But a lot of times your passenger header, if you still have a factory AC box, it'll hit right there, or it'll make it impossible to get the spark plug in or out, which is honestly not that easy even with stock exhaust manifolds. The driver's side is where all the problems arise because you've got a steering box over here. And it's more than just a steering box, but I've got this header sitting here kind of loose. And most headers, matter of fact, I think all headers, I can't think of any that don't. You have to have the motor mount loose and jack the motor up a little bit or a lot. And then sometimes you have to have the car lifted off the ground in order to get the header in from the bottom to get it past everything. And then you can set everything back down and then you have room or you don't. So there's a lot of different ways that headers can fit or not fit. You got to worry about spark plug clearance. Depends on what you have. Angle plug heads, straight plug heads. Some aftermarket heads have the spark plugs moved a little bit. All of that can contribute to spark plugs not fitting right with your headers. Also, you have frame clearance. Some headers come down and they run into the transmission cross member or they're bumping up against the frame or stuff like that. Other headers, which is the most normal problem, especially on Chevy Novas, the passenger or driver's side will hit the steering box. You know, that's a common problem. Some headers clear there, some don't. Some you got to beat them up a little bit, then they fit just fine pretty much everywhere. And a lot of times headers will fit your car, but they won't fit someone else's car, same headers and same setup, or supposedly the same setup. Now, I just did a motor mount video, and one of the things I talked about was header clearance because you have the right or wrong combination of motor mounts. With this combination here, I don't have any problems with my headers clearing. Now, I've got to tighten these up, and I'll do that in just a minute and show you how they fit because both headers are still loose. But a lot of things will change the fit of a header. You've got transmission mount, transmission cross member, any of that stuff can move the engine. You know, transmission cross member or mount being goofy or wrong can move the back of the transmission up and down and change your clearance right here, all right? Your body bushings can change the clearance between the body and the frame and also between the body and the exhaust. That doesn't happen that often, but that is a thing. Motor mounts, like I said, being wrong, being shifted to one side or the other, that can affect your header clearance. A lot of times spark plugs are a problem. These are stock cast iron heads, so I may or may not have a problem over here. Usually number 5 is a pain, and then also usually number 3 is a pain. I'm sorry, that's number 5. That's number 6. Number 6 is a pain also. So if you order a set of headers and they don't fit, whether it's one that somebody recommended a certain part number that they know that the headers will fit your car, or if it's something that you picked out of a catalog that's supposed to fit your car and it doesn't. Like I said, there's a lot of things that can cause them to fit or not to fit. It's not unusual to have to ding them just a little bit. And then they've got small tube and large tube headers, and that can also change how well they'll fit. Now, here on Franken Nova, I've got a 350 small block in here with AFR heads, and they're straight plug heads. The headers I have on this car that fit pretty good, I'm really happy with them except for spark plug clearance. They clear the steering box with plenty of room. These are Hedman headers. They are 65003. That's the part number. Now, they fit really good around the steering box. Nothing has to be dented there. On the passenger side, they fit really good over here. I got to mess the stuff around them, but yeah, they fit really well. No issues there. So on the frame, you can see where it clears the frame. It clears the transmission. It's not all up in the linkage on the transmission. It's not up against the frame. Now those headers seem to clear fine on that car. The problem I did have is on cylinder number 5. I had to beat the snot out of the header to get the spark plug to clear. I did not have that problem originally when I had a different set of heads on it and the same headers, but when I put the AFR heads on the spark plug, even though it's still a straight spark plug, they were moved over a little bit and the spark plug was now into the header, and I kept burning spark plug boots. So I had to go in there and dent the header, which was a pain because I had to take it off because I couldn't get in there and dent it without beating everything else to death. So I had to take the header off, beat a dent into it, and that didn't hurt performance at all, but I beat a dent into it. Now the spark plug clears with the boot on it, and it's not a big deal. Now you can see here on this motor, part number 65003. Well, these headers are actually a mismatched set. The passenger header here is actually the header that was on this car, and then the driver's header is another part number that is exactly the same. Now the reason I have mismatched headers, I had two pair of the same headers, even though they have different part numbers, and this header was on that car, and I was showing up to the track one night. I went to back off the trailer, and the collector on the bottom of the header caught a piece on the trailer, and it bent the header and cracked it. Now I have since fixed it. It was cracked around this tube right here, but I've since fixed that. But in order to get ready for another race, I just took this header off, threw the match to that one over there on the car. It's no different than this one. Everything fit great, no other issues. I'm not sure why Hedman changed it. I've had both of these headers for a long time, both sets of headers for a long time. But this one, I'm not sure if you can get in there and see it, but it's a, let's see if we can get in there and see. It's a 68030. Now the 68030 part number is no longer a valid part number for Hedman. I'm assuming that's the older version of the same headers, and whatever they changed, I can't tell you because there's no big differences that I can see. Now, most header manufacturers will tell you when you order a set of headers for a certain car with a small block or whatever, that those headers are designed for stock engines with stock heads. And, you know, even though the tube sizes may be larger or something like that. So that's the caveat of trying to get something to fit a head that has a moved spark plug location or angle plug heads or something like that. I'm going to tighten these headers up a little bit so I can show you better, because the other car, even though the headers are tight and you can see how they clear, there's a bunch of stuff around them. These don't have anything around them. So I'm going to tighten these up on both sides with a couple of bolts, and you can see how they clear and fit. Now I had just a big bolt in here and one in the back, just trying to keep them in where I could get the header set on the engine so I could lower the engine back down after I got it in. I had it jacked up to get the header from up under the car into the spot it needed to be in. So, now you can see how this clears around the motor mount, clears around the steering box and all that stuff. Now, if you have the power steering hoses, this is a manual or a power steering box that has been looped around to keep it from leaking. And if you have the power steering hoses in there, sometimes it is a trick to get them down and around the headers and underneath that. But that's pretty much on any headers. Now you can see on the passenger side, plenty of room down there by the frame. It's not running into anything. The starter, it's a little close to the starter. I usually run my wires from back here over the top of the starter, stuff like that. And then, I don't know if you can tell or not, but you can see there's enough room down there. And you could probably get the starter out without taking the header loose, but a lot of times it's a bit of a pain. Plenty of clearance around the spark plugs. If these were angle heads, you'd have great clearance around the spark plugs. Now, on the driver's side, I put the number 5 plug back in, and you can see it's really, really close right there. And I'll probably have to take that back out, and I can probably dent this one enough to get it to not burn a spark plug boot or something. But on that car, I didn't have that option. The plug was a lot closer, and I couldn't get in there and swing a hammer and dent this without beating the snot out of everything else. Because I've got a booster on the other car that I don't have here, so I had less room. I'm not sure if you can see or not, but it's clearing the frame And the transmission, it's in the middle between the frame rail and transmission. So again, no big issue right there. Now these are 1 3/4 headers. They're not 1 5/8, which your standard small block headers are usually 1 5/8. Now you may not need 1 3/4 headers, but I just figured I'd give you a part number that I know works on my stuff. It may not fit yours, but you know, if you've got a relatively mild small block, 1 5/8 headers are all you need. But on my 73 Nova, I am running 1 5/8 headers. They're Flowtech standard Chevrolet Nova headers, and they're 1 5/8, and they fit great without any issues. I just don't have a part number for them. So if you have some headers that are supposed to fit and they don't, make sure that your motor mounts, your cross members, all that stuff are as right as they can be, and the best combo you can have, I guess, to make sure that everything fits as well as it can. Now, if you have a header part number that fits your car well, leave it in the comments. Maybe it'll help someone else. We'll see you next video.